crazy, but I didn't know he would.
How did it run after that, Cat?
It helped it. It didn't spin as much coming off the turn.
Welcome to another high-octane episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports Podcast. I'm Steve Winstead, and today we're in the home of Miss Gilda Cantrell. They used to own the old track down by the VFW, and she's been gracious enough to allow us in her home. And I want to thank my co-host Randall Davis for joining me. And how long did y'all own the track?
We owned it 3 different times.
3 different times.
The first time probably about 5 years, and the second 1 or 2. The last one we just kind of drifted out. We had a lease on the land first time for 5 years, and then could release once a year. And then the last time that we had it, they decided they did not want to release, so we let it go.
That's what ultimately shut it down.
That's when we shut it down. But it was beginning to get where you couldn't pull the crowds or the money. We started out charging $1 a person, kids under 12 free, so everybody could come, and so everybody's whole families could enjoy it. There was nothing around here to do. So that's one reason we even started. Because that and Count loved to race, and he wanted a place to do it on his own. Although he didn't race on our track. He let somebody else. In fact, I think it was Cat Styles that he let race Circle 2.
I believe Cat told us the story about that. And that's one of the ways that Cat Styles himself got started racing too, was because of Peanut stepping out of that and giving him that ride.
That ride. So that we needed the cars. The first night that we raced, he said was on a Sunday. I was thinking it was on a Saturday, but I had no idea.
It was on a Sunday afternoon when the track was first built in the fall. And you guys was just getting people acquainted with where the track was. And most of the racers, of the drivers then, came from out of town because we didn't have any here in town, in fact. We had to get them started here. They came from Sparta, Winchester,
Nashville,
Alabama. Alabama.
Yeah, we had a lot of friends because Count had raced at all these tracks, and they wanted to come and support him, which they did. And we had a heck of crowd that first time. We had the roads blocked, the Nashville Highway at that time, it was too late. And the Highway Patrol had to come in and help people get in and out. It was a mess that
It was
night.
a place to be on Saturday night. They put on a show second to none.
We did 3 heat races, and then we did the final race. And each heat race, I can't remember, maybe it was 15 laps, maybe 10 laps, something like that. And then
you had a 15-lap heat race, and then you got into the semi-feature.
we had 5
for those
different
that
races that had not won.
they call it a consolation race part of the time. For those that didn't place in any of the heat races before the feature, they gave them one more chance to qualify in that race.
And that gave people interested enough, or got them interested enough to want to build a car and to learn to race. And our cars then were built out of the junkyard. It wasn't an expensive thing. It's so everybody could enjoy it. It wasn't something that you had to have money to do it because nobody had any money. So it was just done out of the junkyard. And we had a set of rules, and we tried to follow the NASCAR rules the best we could, but around here you just did the very best you can.
There was actually some of the guys that came and raced on that track that went on to be real popular
the Allison
NASCAR
brothers.
people.
Sure did. They came up, Alabama gang is what they call them.
You had the Allisons.
We had Allison, and Red Farmer was one. There were several that came up that went on in, but you had to have sponsors to get into that. And we didn't know anything about sponsors. You just enjoyed, had a good time. Family fun. It was not, I guess it was rough in the pits. I didn't go to the pits. But we had a couple of guys down there supposed to look after all that. As far as I know, they did.
They did.
I didn't question it. If I did, I didn't want to tell him anyway, so.
It was actually, as tracks goes, it was one of the better ones.
It was.
Part of that, everything was kept pretty much to a minimum, and it was my first track to ever race on, and it had been running a few years before I actually got old enough to race myself, but that's where I got my racing career started, where I turned my first lap. And that spot of land will always mean a lot to me, Gilda.
It did to him. We borrowed $5,000.
And that was a lot of money.
And that was a lot of money to take a chance on, to build that track. Coon Barnes had a bulldozer and a road grader, and in Kenneth's mind, he could see it, he drew it out, he was good with the transit, he knew what he was looking for. They took that road grader and that bulldozer and they cut that track out of a little hill next to the river across from the VFW. And he decided he wanted to light it, and he had a friend that was with the electric system that helped him find big lights and set poles for him. And that first race, we paid off that $5,000. We didn't make any off. That all went to the bank. And that started it. And it was what he wanted to do. It was his dream to build a track, and that's what he did.
And I gotta say, they were as good a promoters as I ran for some good ones, but they were as good as any as I ever ran for. And like I say, I ran for some good ones. But they were always fair there. I felt like, Gilda may remember this. There are always some arguments about how much the purse is, and the way the purse was established back then. The track kept half the gate, and the other half went to the participants or the racers. You always got some dude out there that's going to say, we're not getting our half. Either Gilda or Peanut or somebody came up with this idea of paying in cents. Like if you won $15, it might be $15.40, or it might be $14.90. But that
rounded it off.
That was their way of showing you're getting every penny that's coming. I thought that was a pretty brilliant idea.
We rounded it off. We didn't, and if we promised a pot, if we advertised a pot, whether the gate made it or not, we made it up, and they always were paid what they. There was always somebody that was going to bitch about whatever you.
They were going to do it.
They were
You
going to do
always
it.
had
Mm-hmm.
that.
But that's just life. That's just people. There's always somebody in the crowd that wants to.
There's one in every crowd.
There is
Hasn't
one
changed
in every.
at all, and it's still that way this day.
An instigator. And we had an instigator wherever we went to a track. Bernard was our instigator. He could cause more trouble.
Bernard Smith.
Yes. And have fun doing it. And when he got it going, he walked away. And nobody knew who had done it.
Now, in case some of you folks out there don't know who Bernard is, Bernard became a very prominent lawyer in McMinnville. And his dad was one of the owners of a Powermatic machine company. And he advised, Bernard's dad advised him at one point, if he caught him back in a race car, he'd be cut out of his wheel. So at that point, Bernard became Johnny Jack. So,
And Johnny Jack was really not old enough to race. That was another reason that he changed his name. But he did okay.
Bernard was a colorful guy. Things weren't always the way they was quoted
No,
as being. But
they weren't. But like I say, I loved him to death. He
We
was
all did.
a friend from childhood, as far as I'm concerned, because we were all raised right over there together. And Bernard was in with us when we first started the track, but he backed out, and we bought his part out before we were open, because his daddy wasn't too happy about all of it. And what Bernard's daddy said to him, Bernard did.
Bernard's dad was really a great guy.
He really
I had
was.
the privilege of knowing both of them. They were both really great
They were a
guys.
wonderful family. Back then you had family life. You did everything for the family. You didn't do it for yourself or for the gain, for the money, or whatever. It was done for the families, and that's the reason we charged so little to get in. We wanted everybody that could to come. There was nothing else to do here. You just had to do whatever you wanted on the weekends, but we wanted to race, and that's what we did.
No matter how rough things would get at the track too, guys they were family through the week. They would
They
help
sure
each other
were.
work on their
They
cars
worked on the cars.
and come back and compete as hard as you can compete on Saturday night. But Gilda's right, it was a family affair back then, and to this day. The old racers that's still around still care about each other.
They sure do. They can
do.
fight one night and party the next. They're just too. It was that way from the beginning, and you'll see that in the NASCAR people now. You'll see how close those guys are. It's because you are a family. You're doing what you want to do, but everybody else is enjoying it at the same time.
I guess actually nobody understands why you're doing it except that group that you're doing
That
it
you're
with.
doing it with, exactly. Except the people that are enjoying it. And like I said, you came and you became one of us.
Yes, I did.
And
You
that's
hooked
what
me
it
the
was.
first
We hooked
time.
you. And I guess that's what it was put out there. But we had a lot of fun. We had, our flagman was Judd McClooney, and he went on to flag some NASCAR tracks. Judd was good at it. He really was. And we had a couple of pit stewards was Bob Swall and Bill Byers.
Yes.
They kept the track moving, kept the racers on the track and told them when to come out, when not to come out, and stopped any fights if there was any down there. Like I said, I don't remember any of those.
Judd he actually took control of the race and made it move. And
He was the one in charge.
He
The
was
flagman was in charge of all of that. He told you could, and he told you couldn't.
he was well respected. Judd
And they
was.
did. Big guy anyway, he
Yes,
was
he
enough to be
And,
respected.
he had one of those voices that
Yes.
got your attention when he
Yes,
spoke.
and you listened, and you did it. But we had, when our guys here in Warren County started racing, it became a lot of fun because they, Lord have mercy, I can't remember all of them. We had Bobby Stevens, Cat Stiles, Don Hobbs, Charles Hullett, Earl O'Rand,
Whitman Hennessy.
Billy Joe Slatton. Oh, there was so many. And Paul Walker and Laverne Jones and Willie Carpenter was three of the guys that worked on Kenneth's car. Kept it going all the time. You know, you didn't have trailers to pull cars with then. You pulled them behind your car with a tow bar.
And if you wrecked real bad, you had to put it back together at the track
To get it
in
home.
order to get it back home.
And we wrecked in Nashville at Sulphurdale racetrack one night. Tore up a rear end, and we didn't have an extra tire, and we drug the car back on fence post. Drug it all the way back from Nashville. When you wore the fence post down, you stopped and hoped the farmer wasn't watching you, and you took another post up out of the ground and put it up in the car, and here you go, you pulled it home. We got home.
Brought it home on skids.
Yeah, well, on Ace did. One side, we had a wheel on one side, and had a pole on the other side.
How big was the track at McMinnville?
Quarter mile.
Quarter mile.
And that was good size. The quarter mile was in Winchester now. Winchester had a heck of a track. I mean, their clay, their red clay, was so good it didn't take much water to keep it down. But when that top wore off, that was the dustiest hole you could be in. You would be red the time you got out. Your clothes, everything would be covered in dust. They
Everyone-
ran on Sundays.
Everyone knew that you had been to the races.
Oh, yes.
And when you got in the shower, you knew
You knew you'd been there
you
too.
knew you had fun that night because there was mud that ran down the drain.
Your cars were covered in it, but our track's clay was good. It would hold water. We had they built an old water truck, and I can't remember, Stembridge. That's who drove, some Stembridge drove that water truck.
Yes, I don't remember his first name, but I can see his face.
Or smell it.
He probably, he made more, yes, he made more laps on that track than any
Oh,
other
yeah,
guy
he sure
that
did.
ever raced on that track.
And then we didn't have to buy water because the river was right there, and we'd pump the truck full and they'd bring it out on, and he would circle and circle and circle in between every race. And so we kept down the dust pretty good. I don't know. But we had, I remember one night that Sterling Marlin is the same age as my oldest son, Scott. And Cuckoo would drive. He came up from Nashville, and y'all probably remember Cuckoo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, real well.
And they raced, but Scott and Sterling would play down in the stands in the sawdust, because we had sawdust under the seat. And who was my announcer at that time? Ivy Hillis said, "Oh, I see somebody else making money." Said, Peanuts boy and Cuckoo Marlin's boys down there selling Coca-Cola cups full of sawdust for a nickel apiece.
Well, Ivy wasn't he a radio DJ too?
Yes, he was at that
He's
time.
announced at WSMT in Florida.
I know,
Yeah.
he could create controversy that didn't exist better than anybody.
Well, he sure made that night. Those kids, those two kids, they were about 5, 6 years old, I guess. Here they were with a Coca-Cola case. Y'all probably don't know. Some of them don't really know what a Coca-Cola case is.
The
but
wooden case,
it
yeah.
little wooden case hold 24 cups. And they had those cups out there and was selling them. And they sold that stuff. Wouldn't that really laugh? And I could have just wore him out because he put a grease on that. But that was something that they were enjoying it and got a kick out of it. But we watched Sterling grow up, and here he goes to NASCAR and became a champion.
Yes,
I mean,
it was a 2-time Daytona 500 winner.
and I have to say that it started right out here at the McMinnville Speedway.
That track has got a real history behind it. They really was some of the greater names in
There
NASCAR that made some of their first
They
laps
most certainly
on
did.
that track.
I can't even remember half of them, but kind of kept in touch with these guys. And when we were fortunate enough to go to NASCAR track, we could always relate with them and enjoy being with them. It was
And they were regular guys.
they were just old
regular
guys
like
that made
the
it.
rest of them.
That's just all they made it, but they were good enough to do it. And if they wanted to go on, they could. Kenneth could have gone on if he wanted to, but he wanted family. He wanted us.
Racing dominated your life. If you was really involved in it, it wasn't a Saturday night thing.
No.
It was a 7-day a
I
week
don't know
thing.
that he would have gone on as a racer, but he would have gone on as a promoter.
Yeah,
I
he
know
wa- he was-
that because
he really-
that's what he enjoyed doing as much as
He was really skillful at that.
He was.
I've got to ask you though, how did you meet him to start with?
I was in high school.
Now, I didn't
17
ask you
years
how
old.
old you were. I
I
said, how
was
did you meet him?
17 years old when I met him. Slipping into the Ben Lomond Drive-In Theater. I was in the trunk of a car. That's how you got to go when you didn't have any money. And he opened the trunk and helped me out. And that's how I met him.
Well, how did he know you were in there to start with?
I don't think he did. He just knew there was girls in there.
Oh, okay.
I happened to be the one. And he brought me home that night in place of riding back home with a friend. We had a girlfriend that had a car. We called her Mom. And we might have a quarter, dollar, whatever. That put the gas in, and that money, it was 4 or 5 of us girls. Whatever money there was, it went into a pot. That gave you money to get in, her to get in, get the car in the drive-in. And then that would also take us and get us a Coke and a hamburger afterwards if we wanted to.
You could afford to have fun back then. couldn't you?
Yeah. You could go to the movie at Park Theater for a quarter.
Was he already racing then?
No. He didn't start racing. He went to the Army after we married. He went to Alaska, and he started racing in Alaska. And when he came back from Alaska, he said, "I want to build me a car." And he did build a car, but it wasn't very much. So he bought me a 34 Ford on our 4th anniversary. Prettiest little car you ever saw. Perfect. He said, "I'm making a race car out of it." And that became Circle 2. It was a 5-wonder coupe. And we've looked for that car ever since he sold it, and we've never been able to find it.
Maybe somebody watching this might know where it is because that has happened to
It has.
myself and Gary Loretz of finding Earl's first car.
I wish
So,
we could. We thought we found it, or Scott thought he found it in Woodbury, but it wasn't his. So we don't know where it went to. It was Circle 2 and it was gray, and they called it Gray Ghost. And it was 2 was always kind of number because it was the number that Tony Bittenhauser raced in Nashville on the Nashville Speedway when they raced those little what were those little cars?
Yes, they was, I don't know what they called them back then. Walter Wallace used to drive one of them too. And
but that was
some
his,
of those, they were the forerunners of the Indy type cars.
Yeah, Indy type car, and
Yeah.
that was his guy.
They were the front engine open wheel types.
And they'd go down there and watch that car, and it was 2, and that was going to be his number. And that was the reason it was Circle 2, because we put a circle around it, and they called it Circle 2. But it was always 2 in place of going into the NASCAR numbers. It came from that number, from Hauser.
What, my first memories of going to a dirt track race, it was at y'all's track. And I'm just sitting here thinking, which track come about first? That one or the old track at Sparta? You know,
Sparta came after we did.
after you did? Okay. That's kind of what I thought.
Winchester, as far as I can remember, was the first one in our area, but it was a horse track, you know, during the fairs when they used to in Winchester, Franklin County Fair. They had racetrack, and it was a big track, a half mile for horses. Little booty things behind them. That's the kind of horse racing that they did on it. And then it became a car track. So that was the first one. And then as far as I know, we were the second one. And then Sparta bit. Then there were several others. Burgess Falls had a little track up around there somewhere. There was another one up in there somewhere that I can't remember what it was. And then the one up around Knoxville.
There was one I called Atomic up there that got built later on. And it was right off the interstate. The track's still there, but it's a construction company.
Yeah.
Owns it now. It was a fast
the
little
Atomic track. I had forgot about it.
Okay, had heel now.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really
for a while, there was little tracks that would pop up everywhere. But I gotta say, Winchester and McMinnville used to complement each other. I know we've been rained out at McMinnville, and Winchester would do a few things to stall till we could get there and run the feature after starting at McMinnville. So those two used to work.
We tried to run Saturday and Sunday so that we wouldn't conflict, but when we lit the track, we stayed with Saturday night, and so did they, because at that time enough from here had built cars, and there was enough coming in that it could handle both tracks.
It did. There was at one point a lot of I guess the biggest majority of the cars at that particular point were in the McMinnville area, and they actually got more of them in McMinnville and Sparta at one time than almost any area around.
Exactly. There were several from Winchester. Our first race we had out here, Skinny McDonald from Winchester won it. And he stole my checkered flag. And I did not know that until just a few years ago, after he kind of passed away. Leonard Brown bought a T-model from me, and he told me that Skinny had my flag. And I tried my best. He won't give it back to me.
Skinny was a pretty colorful racer.
He was. But I didn't miss the flag until the next day. They were all rolled together, and I never missed that checker flag. And I had spent weeks. I handmade them. I had spent weeks in sewing that checker flag together.
Hey, Gilda was about 2/3 of that track operation, whether anybody knew it or not.
Well, there wasn't anybody, but
she did the scoring, and there wasn't, it was her word, there really wasn't any argument about what you thought. It didn't matter. It's what she had wrote down.
Did you be
And
green
whatever
to help
Gilda
me?
said, just go
That
back and
would
do
go.
it. That's what you were about to
I
do.
could score 25 cars with no problem. This was with a pencil and a piece of paper that was marked off in little squares. And as they came across that finish line, I could check off 25 cars with no problem. But after you pass 25 cars trying to go across there, 4 and 5 at a time, it was hard. I couldn't do it now. My computer is not as good as it used to be.
I couldn't have done it with just 2 cars on the track.
Now, what Gilda really liked were these dudes that would come up with,
Oh, yeah.
with a 3 numbers on their car.
I didn't score 3 numbers. I said, okay, we'll mark off one of them, and you will tonight be 23 in place of 238. You'll be whatever it is. You won't be anything else.
So it was very possible if you showed up, Gilda would change your car number
Most certainly
for you
could.
that night.
You didn't argue if you got a check, though.
No, you didn't.
You didn't care.
That felt good no matter how many numbers you had.
Oh, and there was some of those lean nights, but then there were some good nights too. So they enjoyed it. They kept coming back. We really had a lot of fun.
The atmosphere was great at that track. The food was good.
And we didn't have a thing to do with the concession stand. That was Harold Griffith and his family looked after the
That was
concession stand.
There was another family type thing that was operated.
They,
It even smelled good. Driving in the parking lot of that racetrack smelled good.
they lived on the National Highway just as you turned into the track, and they wanted to do the concession stand, which was great because I knew I couldn't handle the concession stand and my 2 kids and the scoring and everything else that had to be done. I knew I couldn't do it, but they said they'd do it, and we didn't charge them anything. We didn't get anything from the concession booth. It was theirs, however they wanted to run it, and it was another family taken care of, and that was their livelihood for a while.
I think later on too, there was maybe a Hale family that might have been, that I was trying to think of. That it was always a family operated.
Yeah, always. We had 2 little guys, Hillis, that lived across the National Highway. They had a little sawmill over there, and they had 2 boys that was old enough to clean up the track after everybody had gone, and the next day, as long as they picked up everything that we paid them to do. So that helped that family, and they were in need of a little extra all along. But they became, Barry Hillis was the oldest one, and they became good friends. Barry and Scott were good friends. And I know we took Barry with us one year to Florida, just for the weekend or so to go down, because he would have never gotten to go otherwise. And he became a dirt pusher. That's what he did as his life went on. He had a dozer or 2 and did well with it. But I feel like that started from being right there at that track.
I know there's been lots of these things I'm about to ask you happen, but what is one of the real exciting things that stands out that happened?
And to me, or to
That just, I don't care who, that just happened at the racetrack.
A fond memory.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
we went to Burgess Falls one night. Kenneth was racing, and G.B. Green and I were to do the scoring and to teach a couple of them up there how to score. This was a new place. And if you all remember Burgess Falls, it was rather rough. The drivers or the people that were there were rough. And there was quite a conflict after it was over. They were not satisfied with the way it came out. And there was one guy that was determined to come up into the stand after GB and I because he wasn't happy. And I remember I thought to myself, there's going to be a fight and we can't do a thing about it. I thought, I've got one lick and I'll take it and that's it. And I knew that that would be the only lick I'd get in. And this guy started up the steps, and this other guy stepped out in front of him and flipped out a switchblade knife. and said, "You're not coming any further." And the guy looked at him rather strange. And this is a pretty good sized guy. I didn't know at the time who he was. And he stopped and he said, "Okay, everything's fine." They all walked away, and this guy turned around and he said, "Okay, you're safe." Hallelujah.
Gilda had to be in her own police force back then.
Come to find out, this guy's name was Connie Roberts. And I did not know that he had gone. I had seen him before, but I didn't know he'd gone to all the tracks we'd gone to. Come to find out, he was my bodyguard. I didn't know the man. Kenneth knew him and had told him he'd like for me to look after him when he wasn't around. That was one of my outstanding things that I remember, because I was scared to death that night. Absolutely scared to death, because I thought they were going to come up and get us.
Well, what is probably one of the worst accidents you saw?
Oh, Kenneth had a terrible accident one night. He flipped his car end over end. And
Now, which track was
this
this on?
was at Winchester.
Okay.
And Bernard was there that night. And I saw it happen. I had just bought Kenneth a Bell 500 helmet. Now, at that time, that was the best helmet you could buy. And the darn thing was $50. And I had saved my grocery money.
That was a lot of money.
Yes, it was. I had saved money out of grocery and everything to buy him this helmet for our anniversary. And went to, what is that place, the hot rod shop they used to have in Chattanooga, Nashville, too, I can't remember.
Music City Rod Shop.
No. Honest Charlie?
Honest Charlie's.
Honest Charlie. That's where it was. And I bought that helmet, and he was wearing it that night when he wrecked, and I was so glad it had a full face on it. I was wanting to protect his face as much as anything else.
You think he was pretty guilty?
Well, he was to me.
Okay.
Well, he was to anybody else, not. He was my hero. He had that on, and I remember that the Roberts boy came over and was going to cut it off. Was going to cut the chin strap off to get it off his head, and I kept hollering, "Don't cut that helmet! Don't cut that helmet!" But it had saved his head, but his butt cheeks got caught in the seat that we had in the car. It was a fiberglass type seat, but it split and it caught him. He had to go to the hospital.
Well, at that time, we only had louch straps.
Yep,
And
that you could get seat belts.
sometimes you didn't always stay in the seat.
But the seat split and it caught him, so he had to go to the hospital. Bernard was there with us, and his wife at that time was with him. So we got in the car and we went to the hospital too. And Bernard came out laughing. And we heard him going down the hallway hollering, "Blow my, I'm burning up, y'all burnt me up, blow my, you know what, blow." So that's the one I remember. That was the worst wreck I remember, and I know there were a lot of others that were really bad, but that was bad for me.
Well, now, that's about as exciting, especially the peanuts, that you're going to get.
And on that note, we're going to conclude this episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports. I want to thank Miss Gilda Cantrell for allowing us to come in, and my co-host Randall Davis. And please like and subscribe to our channel, Southern Dirt Motorsports, and we'll see you again.